Well, that certainly was quite a way to start episode 7 of Agatha All Along. Agatha teasing us about the Scarlet Witch's return. Well, first we start with Lilia falling, which is very important obviously for the end of this episode. And we're going to dive into big detail about Lilia in just a bit. But after the intro of Lilia falling, we cut right to where we left off the last episode. Billy and Agatha walking down the road. Agatha can sense that Billy is trying to read her mind, so she straight up tells him, in Agatha fashion, to stop. She says, "You're gonna get a nosebleed trying that hard to read my mind." Now, Agatha probably senses this in him because it seems like she does have a little power back, because she did take some power from Alice, and sadly it does kind of look like Alice is dead, especially with the huge reveal of death, finally. And the episode was called Death's Hand in Mine, so I did figure that was going to be the big reveal in this episode. Aubrey Plaza's character, Rio, is what they called the original Green Witch, and she is Death. And this does explain a lot that's happened in the past, but we'll get into that. Now, obviously, Agatha knows that Rio is Death, so when Billy asks, "Where's Rio?" Agatha doesn't want to answer that. Now, it is funny how Agatha says that I'm your former babysitter, I'm your mom's ex-best friend because of all of the events that happened in WandaVision. And technically, yeah, Agatha did babysit the kids. And yeah, in the version of life that Wanda created, Agatha was her best friend, which is really playing into the Scarlet Witch and Agatha's relationship in the comics. In the comics, Agatha actually is a mentor to the Scarlet Witch. And originally, when the Scarlet Witch goes down the witch's road, Agatha, who is a ghost at the time, actually helps her through it. Now, obviously, that is not the story here, but it is interesting that we do have the Scarlet Witch's son going through the witch's road and Agatha is helping him through it. Now, Billy says, "She's not my mom, I have a mom." But of course we all know, and he knows as well, that he is the reincarnated son of the Scarlet Witch, Billy Maximoff. So he can say what he wants, but he knows. But on the topic of his mom, he straight up asks Agatha, is Wanda Maximoff really dead? And I gotta hand it to Marvel, they're really kind of playing into what fans are thinking and talking about online with this, because of course we have all been asking this question since the ending of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And Marvel knows we want to know the answer, but they don't really give us a straightforward answer. Now, first Agatha says yes, and the facial expression that she has makes it seem like she is being 100% serious. However, that quickly changes. She drops the straight look and she says no, and she puts a big smile on and then says, well, maybe. But Billy asks if she's seen a body, and here's the kicker. She says yes, she did, but when Billy asks, did anybody else, she says it's hard to tell because she was in the Scarlet Witch's spell still when she saw the body of Wanda Maximoff. And she didn't have her powers when all of this happened, when she got out of the Scarlet Witch's spell. So she might not truly know if the Scarlet Witch is dead or alive. She didn't get out of the spell until after the events of Multiverse of Madness, but when she got out of the spell, she had no magic, so she probably couldn't sense the Scarlet Witch. So she probably doesn't know, but you know who does know? Her old ex-lover, Death herself. Death would definitely know if the Scarlet Witch was dead. Perhaps we might get a reveal of that in this series. We have 2 episodes left, but I haven't heard anything from the insiders about this. In fact, most of them say, no, there's really not a mention of what's to come for the Scarlet Witch, whether she's dead or not. So sadly, don't hold your breath on getting an answer in this series. That will come later, and based off of everything that we know, the Scarlet Witch will return and she will be a pretty big part of Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, and will eventually get her own solo movie. And kudos to Marvel for essentially trolling all of us for giving us this answer right here, which in turn isn't really an answer. And Billy clearly is like, what the heck? But Agatha says, hey, you want straight answers? Ask a straight lady. Now this is of course because she is with Death. So she's not straight, but it's also, again, putting the focus back on Rio/Death. But again, more on her in a bit. Now, what's interesting is Billy is actually beginning to doubt Agatha based on everything he's seen from her, and he is actually questioning whether or not she's been on the road. It's been said during this series many times, and it's been printed, that Agatha is pretty much the only known witch to have gone through the witch's road and made it out alive. They even asked her the last time she went how many witches made it out, and she said 1. But this whole entire time I've actually been doubting whether or not she's actually been down the road before. There are certain signs that she has, like she knew to take her shoes off before they walked on the road. And when the credits roll of this episode, we see a book and we see some text on it that says, ye shall remove your shoes before touching the hallowed ground. This is sort of them telling us why they took off their shoes. That was never really answered. So there are some moments where it seems like she has experience with the road because she's been down it, but there are also some moments throughout this entire series that have made me question whether or not she's being truthful or not. And we've already gotten some big reveals, and with only 2 episodes left, I'm sure we'll get an answer to that soon. And also, if you did not know, both the 8th and the 9th episode of Agatha All Along drop on the same day next week, October 30th. It's a 2-episode finale, so it ends next week. Now, Agatha and Billy find the next trial, and when they go in, just like all of the other trials, they are changed. Their appearances and their clothes, at least. And Agatha turns into the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz, and Billy turns into Maleficent from Snow White. They can do this because Disney owns the rights to Maleficent, obviously, but they also do own the rights to use the Wicked Witch of the West, because remember, a bit ago they did the movie Return to Oz, and by 1985 both The Marvelous Land of Oz and Ozma of Oz were in the public domain, so it looks like they can use the likeness of the Wicked Witch of the West. Now once in, they realize that it's a tarot reading, and on the table it says your path winds out of time. Now this trial is clearly meant for Lilia, and her path, as we learned in this episode, does wind out of time, which brings us to Lilia and to death. Now, because this episode does a lot of jumping around, I'll do my best to simplify this in the best way possible. Now, Billy and Agatha do believe that Lilia and Jen are dead, so they attempt the trial without her. Meanwhile, we learn where Jen and Lilia actually are. They sank down through, we'll just call it mud, and they ended up below the road in a tunnel system, and Lilia starts going in and out of time. We learn this as she finally explains what's been happening with her. We thought that she was possessed maybe by a spirit, but no, it was actually her going inside her own mind. Now, her body has not changed. Her body doesn't go in and out of time. It's just her mind, even though when we see her meeting with her maestra, which in Sicilian means teacher, we see her older body appear, but that is not what is actually happening, and that is demonstrated by the first time that we see her meeting with her maestra. They show a young Lilia, a Lilia who is hundreds of years younger, meeting with her maestra, and then she starts panting, and she looks confused to be back with her maestra since it's been centuries since she's been there. But then the maestra says, "Ah, I see. You are visiting," because she knows about Lilia's power. She knows that she jumps through different points in time of Lilia's specific life. So essentially what has happened is Lilia has lived for centuries, but then her mind has now traveled back in time centuries and is in the younger body of herself. So again, the body does travel through time in a linear way, but her mind does not travel through time in a linear way. And she explains this to Jen. She says time isn't linear. And I'm wondering if they had Kang in mind when they filmed this. Like, this would be a very brief connection into what Kang has said in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, where Kang says that time isn't what you think. It's a trap, and when you break out of it, you can basically control it. Now, I'm sure this is going to set up Doom being able to time travel and multiverse travel. And it might even be a pretty decent role in saving the multiverse at the end of it all. If you can time travel not in a linear form, especially through the multiverse, well, that's pretty useful. And I think that Doom is actually going to have that ability, since he is going to be replacing Kang, who we did know had that ability via his tech. Now, Doom uses magic and tech, so I do assume that he is going to have this ability to go through time in a non-linear way. In fact, in the comics, when Victor Von Doom and Reed Richards are in college together, Doom actually expresses that he has viewed time in a different way, as a different realm, and his experiments have already shown that time isn't what everybody had thought it was, and Reed said, yeah, hey, my experiments have even showed the same thing. So it would make sense for Doom to have this ability, and I think that originally this was kind of setting up Kang, but now it's just meant for Doom. So a cool little connection there. Now, it's been centuries since Lilia has been with her maestra, and she says, oh, we're having a lesson, but the maestra explains that it's actually their first lesson, which is quite interesting because it's about to be the end for Lilia, because as we know, she dies at the end of this episode in a pretty epic way. Now, another interesting part about this scene is that it's their first lesson, as the maestra explains, but Lilia from the future says tea leaves. I was never good at those. And the Maestro says, don't be silly. This is a fiction you told yourself and tell yourself still. So although in time, this is the first lesson, Lilia has actually traveled into the younger Lilia's body before, and as mentioned before, that she is bad with tea leaves. Otherwise, the Maestro wouldn't have known that she told herself she is bad at tea leaves and is still telling herself she's bad at tea leaves. Now, there is some type of a gap, as Jin mentions, with Lilia's mind, because what happens is she'll be in the present moment, but then she'll jump back in time or jump forward in time. But in that present moment, Lilia is still alive and is still talking and is still walking. And that's what Lilia doesn't remember. When she's not really there in the present, she has no idea what just happened, which is why she's so confused a lot of the times. So essentially, every time she goes to the past or the future, whatever is happening at the present for her body, she does not remember. And she explains that she experienced her life out of sequence. Now, again, it's ironic that they go back to her first lesson, because she says that in the beginning of her life is when she experienced her life out of order. And now she's getting towards the end and it's happening again. And we do know that it is indeed happening again because it was her end. So she experienced it in the beginning of her life and then once again at the end. There's a certain beauty to that. But here's the thing, Lilia is a witch and she can actually see into other people's futures as well. And that explains what happened when Billy Kaplan, not Billy Maximoff, but Billy Kaplan met Lilia at his bar mitzvah. And she explains that she did see into his future. She says that she saw who he was, Billy Kaplan, and then she saw that he would die, and then he would become Billy Maximoff, which is what she means when she said, I saw who you would become. And she basically states that she put the sigil on him so he wouldn't find out right away that he was Billy Maximoff, because she knew he'd need time essentially to process everything. Because again, it's essentially the spirit of Billy Maximoff reincarnated. So a brand new life out of nowhere when you don't remember your past is a lot to handle. So she didn't want him to know right away that he was the son of the Scarlet Witch, because that would have been just way too much to handle. So she was doing him a favor, at least in her eyes and in her heart. She was trying to help him. So that is the full mystery of the sigil, at least as far as we know, revealed. So now that we know that Lilia's mind travels to random points in time at any random moment, we can actually go back to those random moments where we thought she was possessed or where we thought she wasn't there. And it's actually really sad because at one point in time, we see that she was going to tell Alice not to save Agatha. When they were in the second trial, a Lilia from the future goes into the present Lilia's body, realizes that she sees Alice, and realizes that she has seen Alice die because she tried to save Agatha. She tells her, or she tries to tell her in that moment, Alice, don't. But unfortunately, right after she says don't, her mind then travels to the past in the first trial where Lilia was with Agatha, and we randomly heard her say, try to save Agatha. Agatha at the time said, yeah, I like this plan. But really what was going on was that was her being cut off via random time travel that she can't control, of her trying to tell Alice, don't save Agatha because it's going to kill you. Now, unfortunately, she didn't get to say that. And now, at the end of this episode, Lilia is dead. So unfortunately, I assume Alice is dead as well. Plus, the last episode, we never really saw Rio/Death at the end. So, of course, we're assuming that she stayed behind to collect her body, as she said. Now, Lilia and Jin finally make their way to the trial. And technically, this is the first time that Jin and Lilia are seeing Agatha and Billy in this trial, at least physically, body-wise for Lilia, but again, her mind jumped forward in time to where she was already yelling at Billy. So right away when she enters, since she's already yelled at him, she says, don't worry, we're cool. She's already seen part of the future and knows they've already kind of made up. Then she starts the tarot reading for Billy. And the first card that she pulls is the Magician. And this picture is on a lot of tarot cards in real life, but what is interesting is the red robe that the Magician is wearing kind of looks like the red robe that Wiccan, which is the superhero name for Billy Maximoff, wears in the comics. She also says that he has enormous potential and the ability to turn all of your goals into reality. And that's interesting because in the comics, he does have reality shaping abilities, much like his mother, the Scarlet Witch. And we've definitely seen Wanda shape her reality with her magic in WandaVision. He has somewhat of those same powers. That was the first card that was pulled, and Lilia explains that that is him, the Traveler. So then she says, pick the next card, which is what is missing and the reason for the quest. And she pulls the Sun, good fortune, joy, reunion. Now that's what's missing. So he's missing good fortune, joy, and reunion. Now reunion is obviously a reference to reuniting with his family. He particularly has his brother Tommy in mind, but of course it's going to eventually lead to Vision, who comes back in Vision Quest, and then to his mother, the Scarlet Witch. Now time is becoming of the essence because all the swords are falling and the ceiling that has all of the swords on them is slowly dropping, something that I actually thought was pretty cool in this episode. But she presses forward, asking him to pick the next card, the Path Behind. When she picks the card, a sword falls and it's going to land right on her, but Agatha saves her, and then we see some previous moments that now make sense when she kind of disappeared before in previous episodes. Agatha saves her, and we go to the last trial where she was yelling, "Get off of me." She was yelling to Agatha in the future, actually. But then she realizes that Agatha actually saved her, and that's why she says, you know, at first, we really hated each other from the beginning, but now I love you guys. So we did think that moment was pretty random in the first trial, but now it all makes sense. She was actually coming from the future into that present moment where she had already been through a lot with everybody and has grown to love them. But then she goes back to her maestra and she explains that she has seen everything throughout time, that death took her coven. She saw their death coming. She warned them about their death, but it didn't change anything. Her coven got wiped out by a fever, and it seems like she was the only survivor. But her maestra says death comes for us all. It's something that everybody has in common and connects them, but also the literal figure of death, who is Rio, does come for them all. This is where she realizes that she has actually seen her own death. She has seen herself falling. She realizes that she hasn't fallen yet, but she will. She then finds herself back at the trial where she realizes that it wasn't Billy who was the querent, it was actually supposed to be her. She is the Traveler. She draws a card and realizes that she is the Queen of Cups. She's empathetic and she's trustworthy. She then draws what's missing, the Three of Pentacles, which is collaboration, community, singular voices waiting to harmonize. And her maestra told her that she needs a coven. She should be part of a coven. So that is what has been missing for her that she has now. And what is interesting is she is realizing what these cards are based off of things that she has seen already, both in the past and also in the present at the time for her. So in the past, she herself was the Queen of Cups. She then saw the Pentacle on the paper that she had when she was talking to Agatha and Billy. She then saw the Knight of Wands when Alice tried to save Agatha. And it's really sad that it says full of fire, fights bravely. And she did. She tried to go save Agatha, but unfortunately it backfired. She then pulls the Path Ahead, which she saw through Jen and a painting behind her. The card is the High Priestess. Immense spiritual power, but unable or unwilling to use it. And as we know, Jen is bound. She can't use her magic, so she is unable to use it. She draws the next card for obstacles, which is the Three of Swords, which she saw when Agatha was tending to Billy when she thought that he was going to die. It's heartbreak, sorrow, and grief, which is what Agatha had at the time. She then draws the Windfall, the Tower reversed, which she saw when she originally did the tarot reading for Billy Kaplan. That is disaster, destruction, sudden upheaval, but reversed, it means miraculous transformation, and that is exactly what happened to Billy. Well, originally he was Billy or Billy Kaplan. He died, which was disastrous, but he was then transformed miraculously into Billy Maximoff, the son of the Scarlet Witch. Then the final card, the destination card, is Death. And it's finally revealed that Rio is Death. And she has revealed herself to Lilia, unfortunately, because she is coming for Lilia. It is now Lilia's time. That fall that Lilia has seen herself doing has now come. But not before Lilia reveals everything to everybody else. They reveal that Rio is Death, the original Green Witch. Now, they don't particularly explain much about her, but they do show us many times in the past that they definitely hinted that she was indeed Death. We've talked a lot about all of these hints in the previous breakdowns. If you've been with us that long, thanks for being here. It's finally revealed she is Death, and I'm sure in the next episode, it's gonna really start to hit the fan with her and Agatha. So she reveals Rio is Death, but she also tells everybody that they need to leave, and it's very sad she dies because she's such a great spirit. When everyone is leaving, Agatha is first, and she saves her life, or will in the future. She says, when she calls you a coward, hit the deck, and I'm assuming she is talking about Rio, and she's going to throw something at her, probably that dagger. And she's telling Agatha when she says that, that's when she's going to throw the dagger, hit the deck, drop to the ground. She gives Billy back his book that she found. It must have sunk through the mud and went underground, and she picked it up then. She tells Jen that she's the path ahead, and then she locks the door behind her to take on the Salem 7 because she has seen this in the future, so it has to happen. So the Salem 7 come in their animal forms, and in the comics, they can shapeshift into animals, so this is comic accurate. They eventually come out of animal form, revealing themselves, but Lilia explains that if you stick around after a trial, nothing good happens. She then reverses the Tower reversed card, which would make it upright, and they all fly or fall to the ceiling into the swords, effectively killing them all, the Salem 7 and, unfortunately, Lilia. Now, when it comes to Death, in the comics, Death is actually a cosmic entity. And while often viewed as bad, she's also viewed as bringing balance to everything. Death is a part of life. There's a beginning and an end. Balance, and there couldn't be balance without death. She originally came from the cosmic entity Oblivion, which predates the multiverse itself. She was born with the Big Bang alongside her other cosmic siblings, Eternity, Infinity, Master Order, and Lord Chaos. Now, the entity and the being Death does indeed take life when it's time. And like I mentioned, she is necessary. In fact, once upon a time in the comics, the Beyonder, wanting to be a hero, even decided to kill Death herself. He did this to prevent anyone from ever dying again, and it worked. However, he quickly realized that Death was needed to maintain the life throughout the entire universe, and he came to regret it. And eventually Death was restored and balance restored. That is her comic origin. How will she be betrayed in the MCU? We'll have to wait and see on that one. Plus, what is her relationship with Agatha? Was Agatha actually killing everybody for Death because she loved her? I'm looking forward to finding out everything next week. So a lot happened in this episode. Please let me know your thoughts about this in the comments down below. I hope I helped simplify this for you and explained it in a way that you could understand. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss out on the finale, episode 8 and 9, which are both happening next week, our breakdown for those. So hit that subscribe button. Let us know what you thought about this week's episode of Agatha All Along. We'll catch you all in the next episode. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.